we all need to learn to move from a victim perspective into the self-empowering mindset perspective. And that's what then helps us, even though it might still be challenging while we're in the midst of it. But we know that there's light at the other end of the tunnel, and we really have that inner power that we got to connect to. And and also maybe reach out for help, which some of us might find a bit difficult, and accept help from other people.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. You've got it locked to the Audacious Living Podcast, where we inspire and empower you to live your best audacious life ever. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I'm really grateful and appreciative that you've taken your time to hang out with us on this episode. Now, there's no question that stepping into the direction of our wildest dreams and ambitions takes courage, it takes boldness, and a fearless spirit to embrace the audacious possibilities that lie ahead. And today we have the pleasure of diving deep into the topic of that confidence and boldness that we need, the authenticity to stand out and not conform. As we welcome Regina Huber to the podcast. Regina's transformative experiences and insights align perfectly with the mission of our podcast to empower our listeners to embrace their unique brilliance and lead with authenticity in all aspects of our lives. Regina has done just that, and I think listeners are really going to appreciate hearing our conversation and her own personal journey of traveling abroad and gaining new experiences, and the reason why she made those bold steps. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Regina Huber. Enjoy. Hello, Regina. Thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate making the time like this, so thank you.
Yes, I'm delighted to be here with you, Audley. I was really looking forward to this conversation, and I'm curious for your questions.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go where it goes and we'll let it take it where it takes us. A conversation. I certainly do wanted to. I didn't, obviously, you spend a lot of time working with leaders. I certainly, and it happens to be one of my favorite topics. So we're going to certainly touch on that and the work that you do. But perhaps maybe as a starting point, if you can fill our listeners and our audience in a little bit about yourself and what got you to the point that you're at now.
Yeah, so as you can probably appreciate from my accent, I'm German. So I've lived in several different language zones, speaking Spanish and Portuguese for a long time as well, and of course English. But strangely, in English, I've always maintained the strongest German accent of all languages. And I'm currently actually in France, upgrading or re-owning my French. That was certainly also better in the past at some point, but it's all good. So yeah, I moved to Spain when I was 26, and but before that, I think it started all before that, really, oddly, because I have always had this really insatiable curiosity inside of me, and this also drives my adventurous spirit and the need to move around in the world and to explore and to get to know people and countries in other places. So this is very much who I am. I grew up in a tiny little village. I was the shyest kid in town, you could say. We had 10 houses back then in that village. Now it's grown to probably 300%. But anyway, back then it was tiny, and there were not a lot of kids my age. But I always knew that I wanted to somehow venture out into the world. And for that, I had to gain confidence over time. At 19, I moved to Munich, and then from there to Spain at 26. And ever since then, I've pretty much been moving around in the world and just opening my horizon and in a way also my mind.
You talk so first off, the so many parts of your story I find really fascinating, the moving around and the traveling and getting those perspectives to broaden your mind, if you will. You did talk about confidence, and I think that's an interesting topic. You were shy, so what did you do to break out of that and gain confidence?
Yes. So first of all, I moved to Munich when I was 19. So that was already sort of a major step, although it was only
Right.
like, 90 miles away. But for me, it was a big city back then. So if
Right.
I wanted to make new friends in a new place, I had to jump over my own shadow a little bit
Yes.
and build that confidence already back then. Also, I think what's helped me over time is dancing. I love dance. I
Yep.
didn't grow up with it, but I have a big passion for it. And and part of the dances that I love doing are partner dances. What does that mean? Well, sometimes you have to walk all the way across the dance floor to ask your favorite dancer or the best dancer in the room to dance with you. And you might get a no, but you got to do it anyway. And I think this somehow built this confidence and resilience at the same time. Also, of course, when you dance by yourself, you have to express yourself and all that. So
Yep.
dance has certainly helped me, but also just moving to different places and meeting new people. I have always traveled a lot by myself,
Okay.
which then has always forced me to get in touch with the locals so that I wouldn't talk to myself all the time while I'm
Gotcha. Right.
there.
Right. Right.
And
So I'm
that
seeing.
has also opened up, my
Yeah, and I was gonna
mind.
say I'm seeing real value in sort of putting yourself in situations or places that force you to come out. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, absolutely. And I didn't necessarily do it with that intention. I didn't, I did it because I wanted to get to know these places, because I wanted to work in a certain place or to, have a different experience with dance or whatever it is. And, or I wanted to, deepen my language skills. So whatever it was, it always helped me in that sense, because most of the time I traveled by myself and also quite independently. So I don't usually go on organized trips.
Got you. Understood. Understood. So okay, so I'm getting a picture here. You've got this newfound confidence. You're traveling all over. You're gaining perspectives and insights and all these wonderful things. You've decided to work with leaders. So talk to what happened in between there, how you got there.
Yes, I was working at a global consulting firm for a total of 16 years. I left them at some point and they hired me back, but I was also working for them in several different locations. And when I started out with them, I was definitely not in a leadership role myself. I was promoted into one, though, shortly after I moved to Spain and worked at their Spanish office, and literally just after I had learned Spanish. So that was a big step for me, because I didn't really even have relevant leadership background or skills, skills I might have had a few because somebody saw them in me, right? Or potential, you could say. However, I didn't really have relevant studies or experience in that sense, and that threw me a little bit into the cold water. It was a very exciting experience, though, and it taught me a lot about leadership, not always in a theoretical
Yes.
way, but more in a
Right.
practical way.
Yeah. No, no, you learn, you
So
learn,
learning
you
by
learn from
doing,
experiences. Yeah, no, I was gonna say, and
yeah,
you mentioned
exactly.
you referenced being thrown in cold water. I mean, isn't essentially that's what leadership is?
Exactly. So I've learned a lot by doing in my life
Yeah.
so far. I think pretty much all my life has been like that, although I did study as well.
Sure. Sure.
And I'm an avid student because I'm just curious,
Right.
right? I'm very
Right.
curious, and I always wanna answer all my questions. Also, in human design, I'm a manifester, and I have a specific. I don't know if you're familiar with human design, but I have a specific chart that wants all the questions in the world answered, and that sometimes gets a little bit frustrated when I cannot answer all my questions. But anyway, so this was my first step abroad afterward, I came back to Europe and worked in Germany on European projects for a couple of years. Actually, after also spending a half year in Brazil, while I was still in Spain, I learned Portuguese because we opened an office in Portugal in Lisbon as well while I was there, and I had a big role in that office opening, and later also in the Sao Paulo office opening. And after that, I did some European projects out of Munich again, was back in Germany for a couple of years, but always with one foot outside of Germany, sort of, in my mind.
Ready to go. Bags always packed, ready to go.
Right, but I was traveling a lot at the time, so it was sort of outside of Germany anyway. So after that, I went to Argentina to work with an ex-colleague from Madrid who had opened a business there, and I worked with them. But then the Argentinian crisis hit. That was in 2000, right? Yeah. So they couldn't really pay me anymore, and BCG, the global consulting firm, hired me back for their San Francisco office, where I spent about 3.5 years. After that, I went back to Argentina, opened my own bed and breakfast. I wanted to do something, for myself at that point. And later I had my business in Brazil as well, in Rio de Janeiro this time. I love Rio de Janeiro, a beautiful city, really has everything in one city: the rainforest, the tropical vegetation, climate, the ocean, the beaches, the dancing, dance a lot. However, it also had its shadow side for me, because I had a very painful experience with a fraudulent business partner there, which eventually cost me my business. It didn't make sense to keep it open, so I had to make that tough decision. Right. And I moved to New York City. So I know it's a long story, but to give people a little bit of context, yep. I've gained a lot of resilience through these experiences, but also a lot of leadership knowledge in terms of leading myself and staying in integrity, even when there were corruption attempts by corrupt authorities or other people, whatnot, through those experiences as a business owner, but also by leading different teams. If you're in a big organization, it's a bit different than when you have your own small team as a business owner, right? So I've made all these experiences and studied a lot of holistic content on my path through the countries as well, which then gave me knowledge about how energy works, how the subconscious mind works, how mindset really works in a neuroscientific sense. And all the good stuff that also flows into my coaching practice now, because my coaching approach is really very holistic, and I think that's a result of my eclectic experience.
I just so love the fact that you can draw back on not only just the great moments, but even the challenging times, and learn from them. And in fact, I heard you sort of talk about the fact that that built your leadership resiliency and built your leadership skills. Is phenomenal, because Regina, we both know in the moment it doesn't feel like a good thing, and we want it to go away. We want to bury it. We want to get as far from it as possible. So to know that after the fact you can say, yeah, I'm better for it. It's fascinating. So I'm glad that you spoke to that.
Yes, and we all need to learn to move from a victim perspective into the self-empowering mindset perspective. And that's what then helps us, even though it might still be challenging while we're in the midst of it, but we know that there's light at the other end of the tunnel, and we really have that inner power that we got to connect to. And also maybe reach out for help, which some of us might find a bit difficult, and accept help from other people. For example, in my case, it was the help from the friends that studied similar techniques with me in holistic healing studies. They helped me really with addressing limitations and so on, limiting beliefs and all of that at the time. And then eventually I also came up with my own tools and techniques to rebuild my confidence, my self-esteem, and to be able to create a brand new business in a new location, again, a different language zone, which I hadn't been in for 7 years, and so on and so forth, where I didn't have a network, all from scratch, right?
Right. Amazing. And it starts again. And that's the beauty of challenges, because when you get on the other side of them, that opportunity to restart again with some newfound lessons too, right? And to try and get back on the horse or back on the saddle, or whatever expression you deem is appropriate. But the opportunity to try again with these new lessons is just so profound and a blessing, I would say.
It is, and it also helped me really figure out what my core values are in
Mm.
life. Two of the most important ones being integrity and freedom. I always say
Wow.
everything I do is in the service of freedom. And I believe that's really true, because even, when I work with my clients, whether they want to achieve a promotion or whether they want to hone their leadership skills, whether they want to achieve higher team engagement or whatever it is, right? There's all these different goals, raises, whatever, more impact, more influence, more visibility. But in the end, it always boils down to more freedom. To do the freedom to do the work we do in the way we want to do it, to work with the people we want to work with, make the impact we want to make,
Yes.
all these different types of freedom, and also, of course, greater financial freedom. It's all part of it.
Was there a particular situation or circumstance that you went through to identify the significance of freedom, or would you say it was a collection of all the great things that you've done?
Well, it's always been a big part of my life. I think I was born with this craving for freedom. So I've never done well in restrictive circumstances. Let's
Right.
say I always need to have that freedom of being, being able to move around, being able to work with who I want to work with, and to also express myself and to say what I have to say and have a voice. Even when it goes against the mainstream, which, we've seen a lot of that struggle
Yeah.
in people, especially in the last, like, what is it now, almost 4 years, right?
Sure.
And it's been tough, especially also for business owners who feel like they can't always say what they want to say because it might affect their business
Right.
success and all of that. Or also employees, who feel like they cannot really speak their mind because they might uh, suffer the consequences in their employment. So I don't have to constantly belt it out, but I do have a need to bring it into my content, at least in a way that it makes sense for people, right? Also, I
Yeah.
believe that we are all here to gain greater freedom. It's actually intrinsically part of our life purpose, whether we are aware of that or not. Even in fulfillment, greater fulfillment from work, there is greater freedom. And when you can be the leader you want to be, that value-driven leader, and really exert that right, that is greater freedom, right? And I think there are various ways also to gain a greater personal freedom in general, and three of them are gaining ultimate self-awareness. So really being a great leader of self first
Okay.
before we others, and that implies self-awareness. The second one I would say is cultivating a self-empowering mindset and heart set. And then the third one is to really do it our own way and not have to copy somebody. We can certainly get inspired by other people,
Yes. Yes.
but we don't really need a role model. That's something I've always said. I have never really had a role model outside of Pippi Longstocking.
I love it. And
Oh,
Pippi with her hair. I like it. I mean, she didn't do much for me because I have no hair, but I understand. I can see where all the other
she's
things that come from her.
amazing.
She was just so, she just did her own thing. She, beat her own drum. You talked about living free. She lived a free life. And that's why I very much like the expression that you said, everything you do is in the service of freedom. Such a powerful line.
Yeah. So Pippi, I love her because she doesn't care what other people think about her. She she just does what she feels like. She's unique. She dares to stand up against systems or rules that make no sense, and she has that freedom. In fact, she travels where she wants to go, whatever she wants to, and she's strong, right?
Yeah, yes, and strong, and strong. But I would say her inner strength is comparable to the outer strength that she had, right? In terms of
Absolutely.
just being, again, living in that place of freedom. Again, the line, everything she did is in service of her own freedom, and it makes you really wonder how many people aren't able to do that for whatever the reason is. And I say this from a judgment-free place, that there's several reasons and legitimate reasons why people are unable to or can't. But it is such a vastly different way of living your life when you're free, isn't it?
It is. And and then we can inspire others, just like Pippi did with her friends. They were like getting curious, right? They
Sure.
were so different, but they were getting curious about what this was all about, and really, it's really intrigued about her
Yep.
adventures. And another thing that probably inspired me about her is the adventurous piece of her life, because or aspect of her life, because I have always been living a very adventurous life. Some of the
Yes.
adventures were a little crazy, I have to say. I don't want to suggest that you have to live all the adventures that I have lived, because I have had a gun to my head and a knife to my chest and the stuff like that, and I've run for my life a couple of times, but I've
Wow.
also had some amazing experiences that I would never have had if I hadn't dared, venture out into some places. And those situations, they didn't necessarily happen during the biggest adventures. They just happened at a time when they happened, right? And
Yes. Yeah.
sometimes even when I was showing around other tourists in places where I live, because people notice when somebody is a tourist,
Yes.
and when you're in the company of a tourist, then you're more vulnerable than when you already know how to move around, right? And
Yes.
Rio de Janeiro and cities like that aren't just aren't the easiest places. So, but yes, I have done great. I've seen things that I wouldn't have seen hadn't I, for example, gone on night bike rides in Johannesburg,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Things like that. Or hadn't I taken collective taxis in Yaoundé, Cameroon by myself, where you then, you have to negotiate the
Wow.
fare and everything. You never know where
Yep.
you get
Yep.
to your
Yep.
destination and all these things, because I didn't even have a GPS on my phone. I had no reception, right? So I didn't even know where the heck I was in the city. All these different things, and it's just exciting to travel in that way. I have to say, it's much more interesting than going to an all-exclusive
Sure.
hotel.
Sure. No, I
For
understand.
that, you can almost stay at home.
So it certainly makes for some exciting adventures. I'm going to before we get out of here, I'm going to make sure to ask you about some of those adventures. But I do want to get into that the piece around our own uniqueness, right? And when we live in that freedom, that place of freedom, we're being who we're supposed to be. You talked about being authentic and living our own lives, or living the person that we're supposed to be. The other part of that, and I think you sort of slightly touched on, alluded to, is not blending in, and how
Yeah.
important it is that we stand out, stand away from everyone else, and be who we are. Can you sort of expand on that a bit further about the importance of not blending in?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say leaders don't blend in, leaders stand out.
Hmm.
And you can be a leader in any capacity, really, even if you don't have a formal leadership role. Maybe you're a leader in your community or in your family, right? Now, yes, it is important to stand out, because we are so often told we have to own our value. But if we don't exactly know what it is, we cannot own it. So we really need to dig deep and become more aware of what our unique brilliance even is. There's so much in our potential. I always say you can never step into your full potential, because the deeper you step into it, the more it expands. It's unlimited. but there's so much more in that potential. And why should we, why would we not explore what else is in it? I find that so exciting. Also, of course, we need to distinguish ourselves. Whether we are business owners, we need to distinguish ourselves with our unique brilliance, so that, or as I sometimes call it, a distinctive uniqueness,
Yes.
so that other people can figure out whether we are a good fit for their specific need, especially as coaches, right? So if there's millions of coaches, so if I do not differentiate myself in some way and stand out, then people wouldn't know why they wanted to talk to me.
Right. Right.
And the same is true for employees, because whether you are the ideal candidate for a specific position or role is determined by your unique brilliance. There might be people who have similar qualifications as you have, but what makes you the best candidate for that role? What is your potential? How are you going to do this? How are you going to make a difference, and how are you going to contribute value because of who you are, because of your unique experience and story?
Yes.
Our stories inspire us usually to create the businesses we create.
Yes. Yes.
That is a very unique aspect.
I love the term distinctive uniqueness, because it's very, very powerful, but it's also really, really clear on what we need to do by showing up as our own distinct selves and recognizing that we are going to be different from one person to the next. And the way I like to think about it is, if you were a person interviewing for a job position, right? And you're going to see, so first off, you advertise for a job. You're going to have lots of people with similar qualifications, or maybe I've listed the qualifications I want, and I've got lots of people who have that, right? So that piece is done, right? We got the qualifications piece. Now we're looking at, okay, so what makes them all different? Or what makes that what makes that one candidate stand out from all the rest? And I think if we can, as individuals, take that moment to identify, okay, yeah, there's 10 people in the room and they're all going to want this, they're all going to say this. How am I different? And once we can establish that, I think we're on the right path.
Absolutely, absolutely. I interviewed a lot of people. I hired a lot of people at the consulting firm. Very different profiles and all of that for different jobs, right? Also in several different countries, really, really diverse candidates. And I always looked for potential. I always looked for what's in that person's potential. How are they going to express it? What do they have to say about what they're going to do and about their own ambitions as well? That was actually one of the most important hiring assets for me personally, especially when all the most important qualifications were covered already, because of course you cannot miss out on those. So yes, it is about uniqueness. Our distinctive uniqueness is actually about the two sides of the coin. It's about our unique brilliance and genius and greatness on the one side of the coin, and our shortcomings on the other. Some of those shortcomings we can complement with other people, bringing other people into our team who have different greatness to ours. And some of those shortcomings we need to address, like shortcomings that we all need to address are around interpersonal communication, interpersonal skills, right? Communication in general, these are skills that we should all have. But then there are skills that not all of us need. Like specific technical skills, that's for other people. That's why we're all different. We complement each other. And I believe that as leaders, when we fully recognize that value and that uniqueness and that unique brilliance in ourselves, it becomes easier to see it in others as well, in our team members, and to then also value it in them.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Being able to recognize in yourself, and you can see it. And I think it's so important as leaders that you point that out and identify that, because that is key. the other part you just touched on, which I think is also quite important, is being able to recognize it within yourself first. So we can talk all we want about, that distinctive uniqueness and how important it is and why we should do it. But if I can't see it and I have no idea what it is, I'm going to struggle. And so there is a bit of a process to figure that out, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. Before I go into that, I also really wanted to add a quick statement to what we talked about before, because I think it's really, really important. So many people focus far too much on competition, competing with others.
Right.
But when you're fully aware of your unique brilliance and you own it and you know how to show it and embody it and bring it out through your presence, then competition becomes irrelevant.
Right.
We don't need it anymore. And you can save so much precious energy and time that you can then use for other more important things, right? But now, yes, so of course, other people need to see our brilliance in a way. That's where the embodiment of it comes in. That's where our leadership presence comes in, our business presence comes in, and just the way we show up. Whether we show up in a compelling way, in a confident way, or whether we show up in a way that doesn't really speak to people or that's not visible, right? We need to be visible, and that's not always easy for a lot of people. It wasn't easy for me at all in the past, right? And there's still sometimes situations where we have to grow a little bit more in that arena, because we are faced with different circumstances. For example, a few years ago, I had a pretty good presence as an in-person speaker, but when it came to video, I was challenged because I hadn't done much of it, and it felt so weird. With you, it's different. In a podcast conversation, it's more natural, but there's no real audience, and you speak to your computer screen.
Right.
Weird in the beginning, and you have to overcome this and get more comfortable with the situation to be able to bring out what the real value that you have, that you want to communicate, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about presence as well, I would say.
Yeah. I think again, it goes back to the point I made earlier. Once you recognize, what that is, it's almost a game changer, right? Because what it allows you to do now. So if I know I'm really good at this particular thing, well, I think what naturally happens is you find ways to lean in it more and do more of that, or be around it more, or use that more of what you can do and share it with others or spread it with others. And I think that's when you talk about you talk about sort of living in integrity, right? I think that's part of that, where you're taking your new gifts, your skills, your abilities, the things that you were meant to do, and you're actually putting them to use. And I just think it's so powerful.
Yes, it has to do with authenticity that you mentioned earlier, Audley, right? I believe that authenticity is really showing up as the best version of ourselves, of who we already are. We don't have to become somebody different, of course, but also we need to be able to, how can I say it now? To access this brilliance and to bring it to the surface, so that we don't have to play a role.
Yes.
And we don't feel like an imposter, which so many people struggle with sometimes.
Beautiful.
Because that's oftentimes just because they actually are brilliant. They are competent. They have all these gifts and talents and skills and competencies. However, they don't own it because they find it hard to embody it, and that's when this imposter syndrome shows up. And it has, of course, many other reasons. So it's really important to first internalize the value and then externalize it.
I love it.
And the externalization is then almost automatic, because once you embody it, embodying, what does that really mean, right? Embodying means when our subconscious has understood and really believed that we have this value, that we have this worth, that our work is worth.
Yes.
As much as we want it to be worth or seem to be worth. So because our subconscious beliefs become our body. So it's really that.
It's so empowering. It's so empowering. Again, when you said you internalize the value, or you recognize how important it is, and you can use that. It gives you confidence, right? You talked earlier about confidence. It gives you confidence. It motivates you to do more. And again, the ability now you have to impact others, and really all you're doing is you're just being yourself, right? That's all you're doing.
Yes. While still paying attention to, not being your default self.
Right,
I think,
right.
because there are some things in us that are default that we don't really want to show because they are not so desirable for us well, some things don't need to be in the workplace, right?
Sure.
Authenticity is not about telling everyone my most intimate secrets. That's not what it is.
Right.
It's really about, in a specific environment, showing up as the best version of myself.
Love it.
And we all have some dark secrets, some experiences that we might not want to share with anybody because they are just that's too vulnerable, right? And that's totally fine. Or things that we have not forgiven ourselves, because it's hard sometimes to forgive ourselves.
Right.
And that's fine. And then it's maybe not the moment to share it with the public.
Got you.
However, we can share some experiences that have transformed us and be vulnerable in that sense, right? And authentic in that sense, and inspire through those transformational stories.
Yeah. So then on that the topic of sharing experiences, Regina, I'd absolutely love to hear about one of these adventures you alluded to a couple of times, and I'm fascinated at how the things that you've gone through, at least that you've alluded to. So please, do you have a story, perhaps the most memorable one for you?
Well, there's several, right? I don't know which one's the most memorable, but one that people maybe can also relate to is, I'm now doubting which one of the two I should pick. I'm going to pick the Cameroon one. Okay, it's more recent.
Sure.
So I was in Cameroon co-hosting an event with two other ladies a few years ago now. The result of that was also malaria and ICU, but I'm not going to go into that right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's another adventure. But I was there, and I was speaking at a couple of other events. I was on a few radio shows, some live ones, some recorded ones, and whatnot. And one day I was at a small hotel. I had moved from the big hotel where the event was to a smaller hotel for the last few days of my stay. The neighborhood. So I was in my hotel room in the morning. There was only one phone in the hotel, and my phone didn't have reception there. So, sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't.
Right.
But so the one phone was at the reception of the hotel, and one morning the hotel owner knocks at my door and he says, "The TV is on the phone for you. TV is on the phone for you. And you have to be at the TV station by 11 for a TV show." And I said, whoa, okay. I had exactly one clean set of clothes left that were like sort of video ready,
Right.
other things. But so I jumped into my clothes. I had to cancel my meetings, which was challenging enough for the day, or postpone them or reschedule because of the phone situation. But I was able to reach these people and reschedule my other meetings. I grabbed a cab. I went to the TV station, and we were live an hour later at the midday show. I had no idea what to expect. I was I was basically the main talk show host on that TV show. And then they had also a musical band that played traditional Cameroonian music. And they made me dance in that dance studio.
That was up your alley, though.
Studio. It was so much fun. It was really, I had a blast, but it was also totally unexpected. And so I guess sometimes you just have to take it as it comes and grab the opportunity.
And that's so important. Thank you for sharing. That's so important, Regina, because you never know what's around the corner, but the only way you find what's around the corner by looking and going and checking it out. And we can operate from the base of fear that is something that's going to hurt us, or we can operate from the base of optimism and excitement that something there is wonderful for us, right? But we still have to take that look. So I think that's a really good illustration, and thank you for sharing that. And also, Regina, thank you for being here today. It's such a delight to chat with you, and I'm so much inspired by just hearing how you transformed yourself, and now you are helping to transform others and leaders. And of course, we all know the impact of leaders, the ripple effect. So that's such a wonderful story. It's such a delight to hear. And thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for having a fun conversation with me. I enjoyed this very much.
Absolutely. For our listeners that want to learn more about you or find out more about your work, where can we send them?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is transformyourperformance.com, like my business name, Transform Your Performance.
Yes.
I'm on LinkedIn as Regina Huber. Same on YouTube. My channel is called Regina Huber. And I have a book on Amazon. It's called Speak Up, Stand Out, and Shine. That's where I packed or compiled all the little tricks and crutches that I used myself when I was still rebuilding my confidence and my self-esteem back then. And they are great tools just for any public speaking situation or whatever challenges you face in business or in your professional life or just in personal life. And I think that's about it.
So wonderful. And I know we didn't touch on much, but you help individuals navigate their careers as well. And I think a part of that, being able to navigate your career, as much as some of the things that we talked about, you've got to stand out, you got to take that chance, you've got to move forward. And so I think that's a really, really, the marriage of those two works quite nicely. So thank you for this. Thank you for the work you're doing. Congratulations, Regina, and all the best.
Thank you so much. And I say the same. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone listening. I hope there were a few inspiring pieces in this. And thanks again for having me on.
Back right here on the podcast. Much thanks and appreciation goes out to Regina for being here and sharing your very, very awesome story. In our conversation with Regina, we uncovered the power of recognizing and owning our unique values and our brilliance that lies within each of us. She highlighted the importance of internalizing our worth and embodying our most authentic selves to stand out and make the meaningful impact in the world. Regina's journey serves as a powerful reminder that true leadership begins by leading ourselves first and embracing the distinctive uniqueness that sets us apart. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Audacious Living Podcast. And remember, your audacious life is waiting for you to step into it with confidence and authenticity. So until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.